Ah, there we go. Sorry. That's all right. That's good. You didn't have to hear any of that feedback loop when I came in. It's very good that I was muted right then and there, and I just had to fuddle with the camera before I noticed. Anyway, how's it going, guys? That was. I'm going to assume the pronunciation of the band's name is Arsames. Arsames. They are an Iranian band. That was Immortal Identity. I don't remember if I played that live, but I just needed to pick like one Persian band for the show because I will be playing a clip from a 1974 interview with the Shah, which is like during the oil crisis or just after it or whatever, right? So we're gonna be talking all about the whole oil thing, and we're basically going to because like this is it, right? Like the 1970s. Look, the identity of the Islamic Arab world in the 1970s, it kind of seemed like they had their internal like bloody disputes, and unfortunately, America trying to be a good guy got involved in them because the communists were trying to back all of them, because just for various reasons, including their faith. And not every motherfucker over there is Shia, but some of them are, no, like, I don't even know, right? This is in the manner of studying things since 9/11 and the issue of the Middle East and resources and pretenses of war. Now that for the first time ever we've had this real hard move on Iran in the way that it has, a consequential move that has truly disrupted the Unitarian functionality of the IRGC as the dominating authority over the government, right? But if you're remaining, but at the end of the day, that's on the political level. You still have a unified front that wants to do what it wants to do, and is still deeply interested in keeping people in order a certain way, right? And because they have factions within the IRGC regimented towards varying levels of radical ideology. So, there's guys that are all like the Soleimani guy that Trump took out in 2020. Every Trump move that's happened on New Year's Day has always been actually kind of a good move. Like, I'm sorry, Maduro getting taken out, just simply being thrown in any old New York court and watch him go through a process that the socialist mayor can't do anything about. It's just fucking precious. It's precious beyond measure that that's going on in a certain way. Look, if you ever sit me down and ask me what I think the world ought to be, I'm going to give you an anarchist's answer. But because I am a rational human being interested in the conversation and helping, let's talk about reinstalling the Shah as the way that the prince wants to do the transitional government. Because they definitely had Shah derangement syndrome. Fascinating. And looking at the stress on the king's face, dealing with Mike fucking Wallace. That fucking chump who is still around, right? This is, communist fake news taking down the king of a fucking country, right? Um, they're the people that frame the Savak in this brutal manner, turned liberals against the leaders of a country that were pro-Western values because they felt like it was forcing Western values when no, they were trying to protect the Western values he wanted to give his people because his people were asking for it, as per the politics holding his bloodline together. And that's all that fucking happened. You know, listening to what I listen to, I'm not gonna sit here and insult people with like them having their own like, you know, they got like make Iran great again fucking attitude. You know, it's like fuck you. I can't handle the nihilist defeatism. Okay? Polarizing pricks can't have a rational conversation. Must corner a man in a pocket, be a toxic and fearful environment, and turn all potential civic discourse into worthless, reckless banter. The toxicity of social media. And the media is just as broken down now. There isn't any media thingy that has a monolith over anybody other than who apparently gets to be the media circle of Washington, D.C. Or perhaps the media circle of your local government. And we're losing the context of, like, right now, most people's existential sense of the world is completely fucking shattered, but they're in denial. They kind of realize it now, right? But they came to realize it so slowly that it's given them an inappropriate lack of shock, which has an unconscious shock effect that I pick up in the psychic field, have been picking it up, watching them go through the denial of what was happening around them every fucking time they, you know, whatevered. And it's just like watching them in the manner of children being that don't realize that their parents are betraying them, right? This is the parents patre of the nation issue, right? You know, this is why I kind of agree with Thomas Sheridan that you need some sort of a monarchy of sorts, right? Even if it's kind of a figurehead, you know, I think the idea of having a groomed royal family that is a functionary of government, that yeah, he's like the sovereign, but you know, there's a new understanding of natural law in extension to governing, right? Because I believe that that's what the original manner to be restored with what Udenma was as a larger social structure, right? But different, right? We're not restoring it exactly the way it is because we're not going back to the taboo times. Those times are definitely beyond over, right? You know, it's understood as conspiracy fact amongst the terrified who know in Iran that the Ayatollahs are pedophiles. Allegedly. So, me, who knows how the subtle energies work, knows how much difference a mere video that is just put out there, regardless the number Any number above 0, and it's mission accomplished. Even if that 1 is a bot, it still is a statistic on the ledger to the code in record of its existence to be found. But as it stands, I'm already certain that Howard is here. Unless Howard's a fucking bot. I don't know. I need proof of life, Howard. Are you a bot? You need to, like, send me, like, a picture. Like, no, send me, like, a video of you saying hi with your voice and your face. Anyway. So, let's get on with the show today. Where do we want to start? I've got 3 videos, and I may be inspired to go find something to read off of these videos. So, we'll get to the Shah's segment, which is a 13-minute segment second. First, I want to start with a 20-minute segment called Oil and Sudden Wealth, 1970s Middle East. Right? The 1970s Middle East was, kind of an agreeably developing culture. With the exception of the things that I just mentioned, in which we were getting involved with our things, with intelligence agencies, right? The Shah was working with the CIA and the Mossad. But that's only because we're all fucking friends. It's just like, yeah, we're working to, like, USA and Israel are cool. Why wouldn't we be cool? We have shared allegiances and things, right? And the same thing with the United States. And it's us. It's the United States, at least on the public level, because we're talking about what's being talked about on the profane level, the exoteric facts of the matter, right? Because this is the deal. There's the facts of reality in the exoteric world that then gets mixed in with the dark sorcery of the paltering happening in real fucking time. And then there's the esoteric, actual interpretation of what's going on. And then there's the occult path that the esoteric understanding of what's going on leads you to. And this is how you take a look at something from an existential perspective and pierce into it. I have Pluto on the ascendant. You're welcome. Anyway. So we're going to hit that. And, let me go theater mode. I have fair use up as always. This is coming from Periscope Film Channel. I found this. I think I've used material from here before, fair use with no problems. Beautiful. All right. Oh, good. It's in a 4:3 aspect ratio. That's perfect. '79.
Much of the world's known supply of oil lies under the lands and waters of the Gulf. Some of the Gulf countries, like Iran and Iraq, had centuries of urban development. But on the Arabian Peninsula, the people, for the most part, lived in small coastal villages on the edge of the vast desert that makes up nearly all the land. The people made their living mainly from the sea, pearl diving and fishing. Over the deserts of the region, the nomads wandered, the Bedouins.
They're really milking these frickin' camels.
Into this slow-paced Middle Eastern setting came oil, changing the landscape and the lives of the people. The overwhelming majority of the people here are Muslims. Here in Saudi Arabia, for instance, 99% of them are. In all the Gulf countries, except for Iran, the native population is Arab. There were only a few cities on the Arabian Peninsula when oil was discovered. But the wealth from oil and the oil industry itself have caused many changes in these cities. For one thing, one of the most common sights in the cities now is construction. New buildings are needed to house the hundreds of thousands of people who work in the oil industries and in the businesses and industries oil has stimulated.
Okay, so that's interesting. This suggests there's a very rapid transition to urbanization of a tribal people. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But, you know, I'm also looking at the choice of architecture, right? Because this is always like the goddamn thing looking at it, right? It's, you know, cities unfortunately end up with a sameness of architecture for the poor. And I think on a base level, the poor do deserve better than that. And this is why, you know, this is why antiquity studies, this is why fucking studying what we had in the 19th century, the Tartaria framework that people started looking at that under. And yeah, right? And like here you can see like the sameness, just like this one shot that I freezed it under too. So, right? It's kind of like the Arabic flair to a postmodern brutal. And in the 1970s, you know, we were fucking rife with this kind of architecture, right? You know, this is what Ayn Rand was talking about in Fountainhead.
Not only have new buildings gone up in and near existing cities, but whole new cities have been built. Instant cities, where only fishing villages stood before. To get from the cities to the oil fields, to bring in equipment and workers, there had to be roads. New roads through the deserts of the Arabian Peninsula are another part of the change that has come to the landscape because of oil. This highway is being built near Abu Dhabi, the capital of the United Arab Emirates. Elaborate pipelines were built to carry the oil away from the wells.
Yeah, Minecrafting.
Oil was first discovered in Iran and Iraq in the 1930s, a few years later in Saudi Arabia, and then in the 1950s in other countries on the Arabian Peninsula. And it's been gushing out of the ground ever since.
everybody sees in short clips. It's just like, ladies, anybody want to take the job?
Getting vast amounts of oil out of the Gulf region was a problem that couldn't be solved without making a big change in shipping facilities. The existing ports couldn't service the large number of tankers that would be needed to carry oil to the oil-hungry industrialized nations of the world. So new ports were constructed and old ones enlarged. These are new port facilities in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates. The oil income pays for the roads and the ports, the housing projects, and the new cities. Since the Gulf countries, especially those on the Arabian Peninsula, are underpopulated, the oil money also draws needed people with needed skills. These men are Pakistanis who have come to work in Dubai.
Ah, okay, so you see the, you know, what is or isn't immigration for, right? So, is that a legit claim? You just see like, yeah, well, there's a lot of desert out there, right? Right? Like, why would you fucking complain that this is all bringing in outside workers, right? Now, granted, this is probably all legal, right? But then again, you're talking about like kings are making these fucking decisions, right? There's like royal families, there's dictatorships, so on and so forth, right? If you even call half of those dictatorships, right? Because a lot of what happened is that, you know, the European empires went into decline and gave up their grip on the Middle East. But, you know, the international companies stayed invested in those regions, especially the energy companies during the transitional period, right? Because, you know, like you know, literally everybody has to structure themselves this way, right? The Middle East, you know, didn't have enough knowledge of what it was, what kind of oil it was dealing with until a little bit after the war. And so you're talking about, in the course of about one super solid generation of this kind of thing going on, right? You know, you're coming into the maturity of wildly new demographics, right? All of this is part and parcel. Like, honestly, part of the globalist conspiracy is the anti-monarchism thing, right? And, you know, this is why I keep things very personal about how I convey my anarchist beliefs, to not confuse you with the socialist radicalist that understands a profane meaning of anarchy. But if you're going to have a nation, then at the very least, like, having a family as that nation is part of like that reflectiveness, right? Like, the president's family is in the White House with the president, so the family matters, right? All of them have to keep certain levels of parallel secrets, right? It's just like they have like a hintling a hinting of something with whatever level of security clearance that they have. But, you know, they don't get what is going on in Don's private chambers in the war room, etc., etc. His in-house meetings with intelligence agents that aren't even on the docket, right? This kind of thing.
All over the region, foreign workers have been drawn by the need for technicians and laborers, skilled and unskilled workers, to work in the oil fields and the cities. Pakistan, Yugoslavians in Kuwait.
Dude, look at this guy. Look at this guy. Is that you fucking Jackman? Dude, look at those mutton chops. This fucking Wolverine over fucking here. Hold on, let me think about I just want to... Look at that!
Kuwait.
That's Hugh fucking Jackman! Where the fuck did this guy come from? Dude! Everybody's got a doppelganger somewhere. Wolverine!
Yugoslavians and Pakistanis, Indians, Koreans, Iranians, Americans. So many foreigners have come to Abu Dhabi and Dubai, part of the United Arab Emirates, that only a fourth of their population is native born.
Actually, also looking at him, he could also be like Clint Eastwood, too, right? Which also means that Hugh Jackman could play Clint Eastwood in a remake of a Clint Eastwood movie. That'd be cool.
Outside a post office, foreign workers line up to send their earnings home. Oil is the Gulf region's main resource, and practically the only one on the Arabian Peninsula. That region is so limited in other resources that not only do the workers have to be imported, but almost everything else does. While the tankers take out the oil, other ships bring in machinery, equipment, lumber and steel and cement, the product industrialized world. Food and clothing have to be imported too, and not only the basic necessities, but also the luxuries. Merchants have grown wealthy importing goods that people want and can now afford.
So, like these countries, they kind of don't exist. Like, they're so thin as a country that it's really just a king with an oil company. This is really what it is, right? So these are like these are just corporate entities. When, you know, the whole nation is the fucking company store. Everything's being imported. There's nothing there to work with, to manufacture with. Unlike Iran, because Iran is not in the fucking desert. This goes into Babylon, right? Like you start going blah 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 blah. You know, there's no fucking words for the like straight up. This is just a fucking corporation. It's barely a country, right? Just like imagine the King of England just guts the whole fucking country. Except for the employees of the crown companies.
Oil and the business it has stimulated have earned billions of dollars for Gulf people and their governments. But the oil won't last forever. Based on current use and known reserves, the oil might last for only about another 50 years, maybe 100. That isn't a long time for a country trying to plan for the future. Until the 1960s, the oil was mainly controlled by Western companies. But then OPEC was formed, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. Since then, the Gulf countries and the other members of the organization determine oil prices themselves, and their governments get a far greater share of the profits. Now that they are in control of their main resource.
Right, so those are corporate trusts, and because those countries are just all corporation, the corporate trust is effectively a confederacy. OPEC is a fucking confederacy. That's what the fuck it is. And that's fine. That is perfectly fine. I think that you can operate perfectly well as a confederacy, right? There's a fucking reason, like, Frank Herbert's fucking genius with Dune, right? It's you know, the corporate lingo that is the imperial lingo that talks about the Chom and the Landsrad, right? You know, anybody, you know, who's into deep Dune nerdism knows all about the Chom Corporation, which is the official imperial holding company that holds all the other private endeavors in the empire. And then the emperor always controls like basically like half plus one share or something. Like he's always has controlling stock, right? And the hard power of him controlling spice production is that hard stock, right? He wrote all this stuff way before OPEC happened, right? So let's keep going, right? And you know, the thing is that like it all depends on what angle of Islam you're talking about. But how the fuck do you keep, you know, that together with your imported fucking people? These imported people, like, you know, you got your whole social, like they're socialist countries that have some sort of an avenue for private companies. But then also these private companies are much more of global organizations making their contract deals with these kings. It's, yeah, let's keep going because I don't have it straight yet, but it's just wild to behold. Let me actually pull it back a couple of seconds to, yeah, let's pull it back to the car here. All right.
Oil and the business it has stimulated have earned billions of dollars for Gulf people and their governments. But the oil won't last forever. Based on current use and known reserves, the oil might last for only about another 50 years, maybe 100. That isn't a long time for a country trying to plan for the future.
Okay, so, we obviously have to see if because this is always technology, right? Like this is 1970s. I don't think oil through fracking started until the 90s or something. Yeah, it's everlasting, but the wells empty from rate of consumption. So the thing is that because everybody's been tapping the same wells too much, right? So you know, if you can work with more wells and you have the proper competent engineering and proper materials, you can build a perfectly fucking safe and efficient structure to take out this stuff at pace in a manner that is respectful to Mother and her black goo provisions.
Until the 1960s, the oil was mainly controlled by Western companies. But then OPEC was formed, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. Since then, the Gulf countries and the other members of the organization determine oil prices themselves, and their governments get a far greater share of the profits. Now that they are in control of their main resource, they have...
So here's the deal. They don't explain why that happened, right? Like, like my imagination is because of the global manner of things, and just under the guises of the attitude of giving people their national independence, right? Like, this is obviously at a time where the media is not outright anti-nationalist, but they are getting there.
have to deal with the rapid changes that the resulting sudden wealth has brought. Some of the countries have become so wealthy so fast, it has been difficult for them to decide how to spend their money. A lot of it goes for public services. These ceremonies were in honor of the project that helped clean up the beaches of Kuwait City. Public services get an important share of the money all over the region. And so does medical care. New hospitals in the cities and small towns and mobile units in rural areas offer free or low-cost medical services.
Man, these people are so racist. Why weren't they feeding the black baby?
The Gulf countries have the funds to build impressive medical facilities, but they don't have the wide range of trained personnel that are needed for full and adequate medical services. A modern school in Saudi Arabia, another sign of the way Gulf countries have chosen to spend their new wealth. Until recently, only Iran and Iraq had universities. Now students like these Saudis can get an advanced education in their own country.
Alright, so that's also very interesting, right? So Iraq has a university, Iran has a university. Now, I don't know anything about Iraq's university. Is it an in-house university? Because I believe for Iran, they've had that university there for a very, very long time. Right? So they're just now getting into higher education. They're people. Right? And the story as it's understood, and from every single way we seem to find them, you know, it's like you got the urban life, you got the rural life, and the rural life is very poor, and the urban life, there's a lot of poor there, and then you've got a good number of the very wealthy, and there's it's interesting, right? And you see, the thing is they don't need to have too much university, right? Because they're not doing like things like the way that like other places are. There's not much to do, right? They have to build everything, and these are and they're all like kind of temporary. It's weird, right? Now, obviously, this is the 1970s, so things are gone the way that they've gone. These places are either gone from wars or whatever, but
hundreds of new elementary schools have also been built. More girls are being educated now.
رود دیگه چی؟ بافندگی کارهای صنعتی بافندگی مجارستان دیگه فنلند
نه دیگه نه یوگسلاوی بس به طور کلی کشورهای اروپای مرکزی به این کیفیت که هستن.
For Iranians and other students of the region, a knowledge of English is very useful for those who plan to go on for advanced education.
I have eaten my lunch. I had my lunch at 12 o'clock. Are you going to write an invitation to Mr. Green? I have written a letter to him already. I wrote it yesterday morning. Is he going to give you the money? I think he has forgotten to bring it.
Although there are more schools now, most advanced university education is available only in foreign lands. But oil wealth will make it possible for many of these students to be sent to foreign universities. Thousands have already gone. From these students will come scientists, engineers, educators, and technicians, people who will have the skills that the region now needs for development.
Like making a nuclear bomb.
The Gulf countries are also using their new wealth to settle their nomad population, the Bedouins, who make up almost a fifth of the population. Social workers help them adjust to living in permanent homes that the governments have built for them. These Bedouins live in Kuwait. The governments hope to make a settled life more attractive for them. Oil money is also making it possible for the governments to make better use of their land resources. Abu Dhabi has water for irrigation now because of the millions it has spent to develop large desalination projects, converting seawater to fresh water. And because the sand here is fertile, water means that agriculture can become possible in the deserts of the Arabian Peninsula. The desert is being reclaimed.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know there was such a thing as, quote, fertile sand. And then all you need is to desalinate the water and you're good. So, I probably would have known that if I looked a little bit deeper into things like Libya, because I know that was the big thing that Gaddafi, Muammar Gaddafi or whatever wanted to do. He wanted to irrigate the desert because he could finance it with his personal wealth. Yeah, so anyway.
A first step toward the development of self-sufficiency in food. In Iran, not only the wealth from oil, but the oil itself is being used to improve the land. Only about a third of Iran can be cultivated. The rest is made up of mountains and deserts. Oil sprayed on the sand holds the surface of the desert sand dunes in place and prevents them from being moved by the wind onto farmland.
Hold on a second.
Once the shifting dunes are not only the wealth from oil, but the oil itself is being used to improve the land. Only about a third of Iran can be cultivated. The rest is made up of mountains and deserts. Oil sprayed on the sand holds the surface of the desert sand dunes in place and prevents them from being moved by the wind onto farmland.
Oh, I see. Okay. So they use it to dampen the sand. That's like because they need to feed the people that are going to live out there to work for the company store. This is their answer to protect the farm from getting sanded over. they're using a portion of their oil. Now, I don't think they're doing this in Iran, because I'm pretty sure Iran doesn't have that much desert. Right? But there's got, like, I sincerely hope that they're not doing this anymore. I sincerely hope they have better technology for this. Have they tried just a big greenhouse? Because Tartaria tried that. I don't know why we burned it down.
Once the shifting dunes are held in place temporarily, plants begin growing that can stabilize the dunes permanently. Iran is more fortunate than the countries on the Arabian Peninsula because it has water resources. Its mountain streams can be dammed and used for...
Now, hold on a second. That changes the equation. Because if you only have to do that... Hey, May Queen. It's been a long time. I think it's been a long time. Have you changed your name? But anyway. If they're only doing that effectively, I don't know, once or twice or whatever, you know, and because it's fertile sand, then they can plant something in the sand. It'll actually fucking grow, and then that's the question is, can you undo a desert that way? Like, how much fertile sand is out there? I mean, does the oil make it fertile, perhaps? In a strange way? No. Does that make sense? I mean, it's carbon, right? Or does it count as carbon before it's burned? As a petrol? Oh, I don't feel like looking at the chemistry right now. All right.
Irrigation. Oil money can pay for large-scale irrigation projects like this one. Even though most of the countries of the Arabian Peninsula have hardly any freshwater resources, they can afford very expensive desalination projects that make water from the Gulf usable for irrigation and available in large quantities.
Right. Okay.
Oil money has given Saudi Arabia the means for looking into a very unusual source of fresh water, the polar ice cap. The Saudis spent millions to investigate the possibility of towing immense ice floes for a permanent supply of fresh water.
Wow.
Saudi Arabian money helped Egypt rebuild its war-destroyed areas along the Suez Canal and bolstered its economy. Oil has given the Gulf countries power in the Arab world, as well as among the industrial nations of the world.
Dude, could you fucking imagine what the world would be like? Like, if the Ottoman Empire didn't fall, could you imagine what the world would fucking be like? If the Ottoman Empire had fallen and nobody used Middle Eastern oil, right? It's like these yeah, I guess, you know, like these are oil wars because these are all companies, right? The company just is the country, right? I mean, like, not even like Amazon can be like the fucking absolute store of America. You know? Not as long as I can fucking go to people locally. You know? And all that shit. But I guess it's a big decline because those of us that don't want to have bullshit we're working with more niche smaller companies. Anyway, I think you get the idea, right?
But now, more and more oil money is aimed at the future, when income from oil diminishes. Banks are helping governments put much of that money to work in foreign investments. Some of the countries are developing their own industries. Instead of shipping the crude petroleum to foreign refineries, they're establishing more refineries in their own countries. They are building up their own industry to avoid having to be so dependent on the production of the foreign nations.
Right, but how much raw material, oops, do they have to import? I knew I hit a button. Bah. Hang on. It's probably going to be an
Industry
ad.
to avoid having to be...
There we go. Yeah, but how much do they need to, like, they're already, like, you're dependent on fucking labor. You're already dependent on everything. Right? If you've got enough iron ore in them hills, I guess you can do all of this. Right? Like, I hope you got enough of the... I mean, I'd imagine you guys used to make armor and swords and nails and things.
be so dependent on the production of the foreign nations.
Like, the Ottomans had tanks. I know you got something in that list. They really like showing this car. You notice that, like, this is the same fucking car? They probably just did a shoot with, like, one fucking, like, load process from one fucking item.
With oil money, not only can new industries develop, but old ones can expand, like the production of caviar from sturgeon caught in the Caspian Sea. Iran is one of the world's leading producers of that delicacy. Countries on producing and consuming goods, and it is rapidly changing the lives of the people. The people see a new world being built all around them, new lifestyles that had never been part of their world before. They see their cities taking on a new look.
Yeah, no, I mean, indeed, violence, right? But it's just like, they had to import people for, like, this oil and stuff, right? Like, there'd be nothing for these countries to grow off of if the world wasn't so, like, damn foreign into their oil, right? It's a question of what kind of influence are they having, right? Like, what has brought us to this point with the influx into Europe in this manner, which has a tremendous amount to do with the infertility of a generation, obviously. But it's also the matter of none of these people are going to be able to fill the hole that's going to be left by the generation falling off, especially at the numbers that the pandemic did. I just saw this video that I shared on my social media from someone. Actually, it was from Tom Sheridan. It's just, yeah, China's population is under like 1 billion. Yeah, or 1 million, or whatever the big number that they were. They're under it now. Yeah. You know, everybody is noticing that there's less people over there, and that there's less people filing for work, so there's less need for certain kinds of jobs. The horror of it is starting to sink in, right? It's I don't pay close enough attention to what's going on in China, so I can't say what it means to any of them. They've got their own what do you do issues, right? They're going to have to do their thing on their occult path.
The pace of their life is changing, speeding up, westernizing, modernizing. People find themselves thrust into an unfamiliar world. For centuries.
Dude, did you hear that? Listen to that again. I know what that sounded like. I think you heard it. You must have heard it. Come on, listen with some ears for pop culture. It's Duel of the Fates. It's the fucking Duel of the Fates from Star Wars.
For centuries, Gulf peoples have lived by the values of a culture that was developed by nomads and village farmers, craftspeople and traders. For centuries, Islam and its laws acted as a stabilizing force for the people. Now oil is moving these Gulf peoples into a technological society with new values, new pressures, new problems. And their main problem is how to keep their old world stable while they blend the forces of this new world into their lives.
Very, very good the way they ended that. I love the way they ended that with the guy doing his fucking prayer, kissing the ground, bringing up the oil, right? Like, couldn't have framed a more goddamn poetic fucking shot. Okay. Now we're going to jump over to old school 60 Minutes with fucking Mike Wallace. Alright. This guy is fucking frustrating. So, here we go. Like, just see the fucking shilling in the way that Mike handles this goddamn fucking conversation. Like, what kind of fucking journalism is this, right? You know, this is entirely appealing to the, you know, like the press was, you know, they love to weaponize the political gossip, right? Without telling you what they are, right? You know, they're very disingenuously pretending to be nonpartisan, bipartisan, almost of a politically secular nature. But no. They're all Fabian socialist globalists. That's what they all fucking are.
Minutes rewind.
Chances are your car is sat in your garage or driveway this weekend, and chances are that your local gas station is going to be closed a lot more Sundays this winter. What part does the Arab oil embargo play in all of this? One Middle East monarch thinks that you're being sold a bill of goods. To try to understand something of the background of the oil shortage, a 60 Minutes crew has spent the last 3 weeks in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia and Iran, the two largest oil exporting countries in the world. Our story on Saudi Arabia is still in work, but in Iran, earlier this week, we went to see the man who runs that country and, in effect, its oil industry.
Shah Mohammed Rizza Pahlavi is not an Arab. He makes a point of calling himself Aryan. And unlike the Arabs, he will sell oil to anyone if the price is right. Along with...
Now, certain people that have certain feelings about people that proudly call themselves Aryan are gonna not like you. I like this guy.
With the Arabs, he is a member of Opec, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. That's the group that is holding the world's feet to the fire with the rocketing price of oil. This week in Tehran, the Shah offered to put up $1 billion, and he can afford it, of his oil money, for a fund that would cushion the devastating economic effect of the oil crunch on the have-not nations. And he took time out in his Niavaran palace.
We built a lighter that burns at 1,000.
So like right there, he framed it the have-nots. Whoops, excuse me. He framed it the have-nots. That is precisely the way a goddamn fucking communist talks. That's what the fuck this guy is. All right, let's go. Come on, gotta unmute it. Go back again. There we go.
And he took time out in his Niavaran palace to talk to us.
Sheikh Yamani told me a week ago in Riyadh that he was very optimistic that during February there was going to come the disengagement between Syria and Israel and the oil embargo would be lifted. He was optimistic. That optimism obviously has turned sour. Why? Do you know?
Well, there might be many reasons. One is that I don't know why you attach so much importance to this embargo on the United States, really. Why should you care about that? You are not short of oil.
Have you seen the lines of cars stretching for blocks, in some cases for miles, waiting to get gas?
I have seen the pictures.
And you cannot
But you have imported more oil than any time in the past.
Well, not recently, we haven't.
You have?
You mean we are still importing more oil than we were, let's say, in September? You believe that?
I can't say for sure. But what is certain is that you are not importing less.
Than we were importing last September? Then this whole thing is a fraud?
You know that ships are changing their destinations 2 or 3 times in the oceans. You sell the oil for a certain destination and it ends up somewhere else.
What you seem to be saying is that there is some fraud involved, that there is something going on that doesn't meet the eye.
Oh, something is going on for sure.
And who is being enriched by it?
The oil companies.
The oil companies.
You know that one oil company has made 67% interest this year and another one even more?
Well, the president of Aramco acknowledges.
Yes?
Not the president, the chairman of the board of Aramco acknowledged to us that their profits, the parent company, will go up by 400%
yes.
next year, just as Iran's profits will go up by 400%.
Yes, but this is our wealth, our natural wealth. For them, it's only a question of manipulation.
As you know, I have been across the Gulf that you call Persian and they call Arabian.
Why do you call it Gulf? You have been...
So, get that? You get that? Oh, and I'm going to rewind that real quick because that question was a real piece of work. And I like the way he answered it, too. Shit. What was my point? I really wanted to say I was going to say here. Look at this.
As you know, I have been across the Gulf that you call...
Yeah. Wait, 1 second.
The parent company will go up by 400%.
Right, so it's his natural wealth. He's somehow right. He quote defends it. Well, I quote say he defends it, but I mean like that's just a matter of fact, right? It's just that like that's just the success of the business, and he throws it out there about oh yeah the wealth, and then like the wealth then also that goes into the country, right? Yeah, he gets like wealthy, like this is the whole thing. Like, this is not the problem of capitalism, right? But capitalism can feel like a problem in certain respects, right? But there's no escaping the fact that somebody in your country needs to take in a lot of money being made. Right? The company has nothing to do with who he is as the king. The company is an endeavor that the king is doing to his personal wealth, which goes towards the power of what he does as king for Iran, and then he runs that by his people, and then it's just otherwise a question of, with the exception of the grievances of socialists, communists, fucking Shiite fundamentalists, did anybody have a legitimate grievance in the way he fucking ruled on an economic level? Because this is it. Like, there's the brutality of the Savak, and then there's that very issue he fucking asks him about. And that's about it. That's about the only two fucking things. And then you look carefully at that whole situation, and by all intents and purposes, it was as on the level humane and civic as fuck. And ethical as fuck, and the whole 9 yards.
Yes. Next year, just as Iran's profits will go up by 400%.
Yes, but this is our wealth, our natural wealth. For them, it's only a question of manipulation.
As you know, I have been across the Gulf that you call Persian and they call Arabian.
Why do you call it Gulf? You have been to school, or haven't you?
Yes.
What was the name that you have read during your school days?
Persian Gulf.
All right.
But they do call it Arabian.
Right? Because it's just, like, there are many gulfs out there. And he could be playing a word game, and you have to be careful about that, because he knows he's sitting with a den of thieves. He knows he's sitting with the enemy. He knows he's sitting with a communist, anti-monarchist, globalist type person, and he's a Aryan nationalist, showing you what a leader looks like, being benevolent in our times, stacked up with where the West is at the same time. Because Persia didn't have a massive problem going into quick modernization, just like Japan did not have a massive problem with it. There are many rational countries that do such things. It's not just the whites and the Asians.
Well, they can do many things.
And they find an irony in the oil situation. In this, they say, we impose the embargo against the United States, for instance, and the European countries. That drives the cost of oil up. Who benefits from the embargo? Iran, the Shah. Shah, who is the friend of Israel, benefits from the high price of oil caused by our embargo.
Yeah, but only enemies of Iran could have told you that. First of all, why friend of Israel?
Why?
In what sense?
Well, economic cooperation.
How much?
I don't know the extent of
It
it.
doesn't come even to $2 or $3 million a year.
Intelligence cooperation.
You can get that kind of intelligence even in reading American newspapers.
It is common knowledge that they trained or helped to train your secret police, the Savak. You do have a relationship with the Israelis,
Yes,
there's no
that's
doubt.
ridiculous, but we have the same relationship with all the friendly Arab countries that we...
You see that fucking question? That is the fucking line that your fucking woke friends are talking about to this day about about fucking Israel's intelligence people helping the Savak do its thing. Right? And then it's the Jews buddy on the internet runs with that without understanding what that truth of that relationship actually fucking means. And if you are the leader of a fucking nation in our weird, chaotic Aquarian world of complicated intermixings and dealing with all sorts of migrations and stuff, like, what the fuck are you supposed to answer? Right? You know? Because this has everything to do with nothing more than making an indictment of a monarch running a nation, right? Which, okay, we're America. We have that in us. Right? But people have to make up their mind. If a situation is not broken, why do you want to interfere with it? Right? You're just looking at a perception of reality you don't like, but you're interfering over petty grievances and inflating petty grievances. Right? Great deal of these rabble-rousing organizations, many of which created by the SPLC, don't exist anymore. Right? So you tell me, was it the Savak or was it, some aspect of the free press in Iran that the Shah in his doing the right thing under the wisest manner one could allows there to be all sorts of voices grieving opinions, and you're hoping that everything is rational with your people, or like whatever way you thought it was gonna go fucking down, right? It makes him a victim of a changing fucking world. And listen, man, if England gets to keep its king, who's also king of Canada, probably Australia and New Zealand, Commonwealth and all, then Iran can, at the very least, have this guy's son do something.
We train also in this country. This means nothing.
The industrial nations, among them, of course, the United States, feel that you, sir, have pushed too far, too fast, and that you can trigger worldwide depression by doing it. Henry Kissinger says so. Sheikh Yamani, the oil minister of Saudi Arabia, says so.
That suits him. I'm not talking about Yamani because I don't like to enter into that subject. But the others, it suits them to say that. Why? Because the price that we have set for oil was one of the lowest among the prices which were studied and suggested to the OPEC organization by all the experts.
You say you don't want to talk about Saudi Arabia and Sheikh Yamani. Well, nonetheless...
You see, the Matrix Code scripts itself, like, they fucking name these people on purpose. Sheikh Yamani. Like, This is the same fucking guy that asked Donald Trump if he was a comic book supervillain. And people in the world of lavish wealth, their name is Shake Your Money in English. It's mockery. It's fucking mockery by whatever forces are doing this, right? And we have to deal with being mocked this way, you know, for the ignorances of our generation in many respects. And, you know, a good people can unfortunately be found suffering for an unconscious collective sin.
Saudi Arabia, #1 oil producer, has certainly as great a stake as you do. And yet, he says, it's going to trigger depression. It's going to trigger trouble.
He has been told to say that. I'm sorry to say this.
By?
I'm not going to mention any names.
Well, by President Nixon?
I'm not going to mention any names. Ask the other member of the OPEC, all those experts in the OPEC, what they think.
But what kind of pressure can somebody put upon Sheikh Yamani to say it, unless his own king says say it?
You just go and ask those people.
Is it going to go down? Is it going to go up? Is it going to stay the same? The cost of oil...
It's going to go certainly up because, unfortunately,
You see, like, I think that, you know, Mike was trying to entice him into fucking starting hostilities with his fucking neighbors by saying these kinds of things. Right? You know? Like, he's trying to basically, like, get him to, like, I don't know, libel or slander, like, these people. Right? He's trying to, cause these kinds of problems. And it's 1974. This guy's got fucking 4 years left. Doesn't know it. As running the show. But he knows that he's got a big fucking problem on his hands.
your inflation is going to go up.
Is it going to go up on April 1st when...
This I can't say.
Well, you sit down with your OPEC brothers in the next few weeks, and you make a decision about the price of oil as of April 1st. Can you give us a horseback guess, Your Majesty?
I can't tell you, really. But all will depend on many factors. One is the attitude that the so-called industrial countries of the world are adopting. Is it a hostile attitude or a cooperative attitude?
You tell me, sir.
Second, it's the question of your inflation. The bill that they are every day presenting us is something ridiculous. The way that you are increasing your prices.
On?
Everything. Every kind of commodity.
For instance?
Say some spare parts for a radar station. That's only one little example. And from that you can go for everything.
Is it in retaliation for the rise of...
No, it's because they cannot control their economy.
But you can.
We can, and that's what we call your society a permissive society.
Is that that's not the only reason you call our society a permissive society?
Not the only reason.
Your Majesty.
Not the only reason.
Well, this is not a pretty subject to bring up to His Imperial Majesty, but there are those from the West who say, look at the corruption.
It's just a vile question. It's a vile, open-ended fucking question that any nation that has a respectable leader ought to feel nationally insulted. Right? If you've got a monicum of just respect, no worship or derangement syndrome, just whatever the real general vibe outside of people that argue politics as their personalities, and hopefully those are just on the outskirts. you know, it's just like, what the fuck was that? Who the fuck are you?
In Iran, with all of the money in your own affluent economy, in your own swollen economy, so much money sticks to the hands of people in the government. They say you can't get a contract here, and everybody's here. You know that. Vendors, contractors, without a little of true?
I think it's the most unjust thing that is said. It's just jealousy. For instance, the military purchases, it's government to government. If there is a corruption, it's from your government or the government of every other country from which we buy. So this is the unfairest and most unjust thing that I have heard.
Is it possible, Your Majesty, that because you are so busy and because you have so many things occupying you, that it could be going on behind your back, sir?
No.
See, like, right there, that's just, you know, that's part of, which is fair if he wants to have a real fucking conversation about his ideology, that he's an anti-monarchist, right? The idea is that, like, you know, for one thing, he's going to be an anti-nationalist anyway, right? You know, and he wants, you know, like this is him, like, prying, you know, in an envious communist fashion of, come on, give me your oil. Come on, undercut your fucking price. Your people aren't worth it. Look at the rest of the fucked up world, especially the ones that don't like you. Maybe they'd like you if you just gave them cheap oil, right? And that's the subtext of it. And they don't want the layman to understand that. And then this asshole gets a pass on that. That becomes the predominant fucking framework of the political thought that goes on in what Congress feeds off of and the president feeds off of, and what any Supreme Court's gonna have to work with. And if monarchy has lost the conversation in the global order, right? You know, so it's a time where you're trying to be this benevolent king and all that stuff, and it's just, yeah. Because this guy is probably on the, you know, at the worst, he's on ethical par, you know, with any other king we still got going on. You know, I was talking to Stein about the royal family of the Netherlands.
It's impossible because I have at least 5 inspectorate organizations. One, sooner or later, they will be caught. And let me say this. First of all, I think this is a cheap accusation. Second, it is less than anything that you have in your so-called permissive society.
You mean you think there is more corruption in the United States than in...
Well, especially in your country, yes.
The story will continue after this.
You are one of the longest ruling monarchs in the world today, Your Majesty. 33 years, you've survived assassination attempts, internal strife, external threats. Why?
Why did I survive?
Yes.
Well, I believe in God. Ask him.
You do?
I do.
mean, very
seriously.
deeply.
Oh, yes. And I think this is the only explanation.
You have said the only explanation. You said, I will stay alive until I finish what I set out to do.
What was set for me to do.
By God.
That's what I believe.
When you were a little boy, you saw visions, you saw apparitions. God came to you, or God's messenger came to you.
Yes.
For some of us in the West, that is difficult to comprehend. But
No, it's not.
I say you believe it.
No.
You say it.
No, it's not. It's not. That is the easiest thing for everybody in the West to understand, with the exception of the atheist fucking snobs of the globalist agenda. Right? They don't fucking believe it, and they've got an inflated identity of themselves, right? Now, a spiritual person can question whether it was God or whether his conceptualization of God is one thing or the other. I can't remember if the Shah, I can't remember what religion he was. I will look that up.
I do.
What happened?
Started by dreams, then apparitions and feelings, but all in 1 year, not more, between the age of 6 and 7. And then it stopped.
You have no more dreams, apparitions, visions?
Okay, so he was a follower of the 12er Shia Islam, is what DuckDuckGo's AI assistant answered immediately. So he is a Shiite, right? But obviously he's not a fundamentalist. So what I would want to fucking know, like, this is important, right? Like he would obviously be a fucking moderate Shiite, right? Like, because he's all sorts of things. He's not Mr. Anti-Israel. Right? He's very fucking pro-Israel, in fact. So, yeah, I would have to understand what 12er Shia Islam is.
Now.
Sometimes I have dreams which come true and I don't like it.
Assassination attempts?
No, not that.
But you had premonition,
Not that. When I was a kid, once I dreamt that there was a pit full of snakes, and obviously people who are always translating the dreams told me that these are your enemies. Things like that. It happens to everybody, probably. But not that.
You sleep more soundly now?
With my sleeping pills, yes.
You take sleeping pills?
Since some time now. Well, it's really tranquilizers.
You know, very few leaders like yourself, you met.
Yeah, he's taking tranquilizers, right? Like, I'm sure that he probably, under a slightly wiser counsel, have gotten the circumstances under control that had been set in motion in 53, right? And is he just saying that sleeping pills are tranquilizers, or he's using it as a tranquilizer, or that he's taking tranquilizers? Which is interesting, right? It makes me think of the way they ran the story for the fourth Matrix movie with, the blue pill schedule for Neo to keep him asleep. And, he takes the tranquilizers and, he's getting certain kinds of advice, so he must have had a worm tongue. I'd imagine there was a worm tongue.
Majesty, talk with the candor with which you have talked on television. Why? Why are you willing to?
First of all, I believe in what I say. Secondly, I'm not afraid of my people. It's not a political campaign. I'm not going to look at the polls tomorrow to see if I'm 2 degrees higher or lower. And that's because this confidence exists between me and my people. They trust in me, I trust in them. I believe that I know the job. So I'm not trembling in thinking or saying what I say, because I know that tomorrow I won't have to go to the polls.
Right. And so they worked very hard to spin that as evil. Super duper evil. No. People are full of nonsense. That's what they are. Okay. So, let's take a minute here. 12er Shia Islam. Let me see what we got. I don't know who to trust. Bear with me here. I guess, is this 12er? This seems to be some website for it. Give me 1 second before I... Because is this the same Islam? Can't be the same Islam if it was the Islam of the Shah. Syed Muhammad al-Muswai. I believe I've heard this guy's name. Right? So I think maybe it is. Rebecca Masterton. Syed Muhammad I want to get information about what 12er was in his time. 12er Islam under Islam in the... Let's go back to... Let's go back to the 1930s. All right. Give me some history here. Come on. Islam that serves both. Bear with me. Think I might have something. Come on, I want something old. Give me 1 second. I'm not going to waste your time. I promise. Because I got one more video for you either way. Let me see here. On the birth of your religion. All right, forget it. I'm gonna figure this out in the backdrop. Hold on, which video is this? Oh, I didn't want to watch this one. I don't know why I pulled this one up. There was a different one that I wanted. Okay, bear with me here. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna take an intermission. That's what we're gonna do. I want an intermission, to see if I can clear a thing or two up. Let me take a look and see if I can find another good song to play. We'll keep with the same. All right, we're gonna do another Arsames song. I'm gonna go with this one, which is called Homo Sapiens. I have no idea if it's well produced or anything. I'm just going with it. Okay, hang on. Here we are. All right. So, here's what we're gonna do. There it is. Okay, so we're gonna use Britannica on this one. So 12er Shia. Let me make sure you guys can see. Oh, I didn't hit the button. There we go. All right, let me frame this properly. Should have used a different thing for it. That's okay. All right. Oop, almost there. Hold on. That'll do. Good. Okay. 12er Shia. The largest of the three Shia groups extant today. The 12er believe that at the death of the Prophet Muhammad in 632 CE, the spiritual political leadership, the imamate of the Muslim community, I guess that would be the clergy of imams, was ordained to pass down to Ali, the Prophet's cousin and son-in-law, and then to Ali's son Hussein, and thence to other imams down to the 12th, the Muhammad ibn al-Hassan, who is understood to have been born circa 870, but to have gone into occultation, or the Geba. He went to the Geba? Or it's the Gebat. All right. He went to the Gabe. And it's spelled the way that we say it to make fun of word searches for the word gay. That's funny. Anyway, anyway, a state of concealment by God. Soon after his father's death, circa 874, the hidden imam, as he is sometimes called, is considered to be still alive and will return when God determines it to be appropriate and safe. Okay. As the rightly guided one, the Mahdi, upon his return, he will inaugurate the process associated with the last days and the day of judgment. In particular, as part of that process, Jesus also will return. Other titles associated with him include the Awaited One, the Al-Muntazar, the Imam, or Lord of the Age, the Imam Am-Zaman, or the Sahid al-Zaman, the Lord of Authority, Sahid al-Emir, the One who arises, Al-Qa'im, and in reference to the presence of God, the Proof, Al-Hujjah. During their years in the community, the imams faced harassment and persecution at the hands of the Abbasid caliphs, who feared that the imams would organize rising against their rule following the 12th imam's occultation. So this is the Sunni thing, right? The 12ers, I guess, would eventually distinguish themselves because nobody else was like this. During the Boyid period in what is now Iran and in Baghdad, there were also pockets of the community scattered across a region extending from what is now Lebanon to Khorasan, what is now northeastern Iran, and parts of Turkmenistan and Afghanistan, and in the Persian Gulf region at the fall of Baghdad to the Sunni Seljuks in 1055, the Baghdad community scattered to these other centers. From the years following the 1258 Mongol conquest of Baghdad, the Abbasid capital from the 8th century through the Ilkhanid period in Iran, 1256 to 1335, 12er Shiite scholars enjoyed some favor at court, but the bulk of the community remained scattered across the region. Only in Iran did the faith finally find a home. There, except for a brief hiatus in the mid-18th century, Twelver Shi'ism has been the established faith since 1501, when Ismail I, the first Safavid Shah, captured Tabriz and declared Twelver Shi'ism to be the official religion of his new realm. The faith forms the basis of Iran's present-day Islamic Republic, which came into being in 79. Up to 95% of today's more than 80 million Iranians are professing Twelver. Iranian Shia representation, perhaps 40% or less of the world's Twelver Shia population. However, the Shia are majority population in Iraq and Bahrain and form important minorities in Lebanon, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. And the question is it all the Twelvers, right? Because when I'm listening to people that are like pro Shah and stuff, they're just like, we want all these Durka guys out, right? Like they talk in the South Park parlance of it. They have that little respect for the IRGC type peoples, for their lived horrific experience. There are also Shia in Egypt and Israel, other non-Arab countries in which the Shia are present. All right, so this is generally talking about Shia, but I very specifically want the official Iranian Twelver. That's what I care about. Until the return of the Imam on matters of both doctrine, the Hadith, in addition to the Quran and the Hadith of the Prophets, right? Because what made him like the progressive, like the socially progressive Shah? Why was he like that and socially progressive, right? Did he believe that the Twelver Faith's real direction was to understand things that way and to bring that in? And as much as that's not a problem for me and shouldn't be a problem for them, they may have a reason to go a different direction about it. But anyway, in the 19th century, the Twelver clergy underwent further hierarchization with the institutionalization of the Marja, or Marja, the Marja al-Taqlid, or source of emulation. The most senior cleric for some years thereafter there was but one such figure. Today there are 20 or more such individuals. The Maraji, including some non-Iranians and non-Arabs, lay followers, the Muqallidin, the singular Muqallid, are enjoined to follow the teachings and rulings of the Mujtahid, or the albeit the one of their own choice. All right, let me see. So yeah, that's talking about the Islamic Republic. Institution equivalents of the Pope and the Twelver. Okay, and disagreements within the ranks of the Twelver scholars is not uncommon. For example, the concept of the guardianship of the jurist, the Arabic Lahit al-Faqih, the Persian Veliyat al-Faqih, which advocates the political leadership of the religious scholars, the ulama in the constitutional arrangement of the Islamic Republic of Iran is not accepted by all Twelver scholars. Okay, the religious scholars ulama in the constitutional arrangements. Okay, so the ulama is a point of disagreement in Iranian politics, according to Britannica. Not accepted by all Twelver scholars alone, by all the faith's Mahraji. Shiite members of the smaller of the two major branches of Islam, the Shia distinguished from the majority Sunnis. All right, let's take a look. I want to jump ahead. That was a good overview. Very, very long history. We all know about, 6,000 years and such. All right, 1304, 1588. Now we're getting somewhere. There's the ulama being mentioned. Where are we here? Did I skip ahead? What century are we in? During the 16th century. Established empire, faith, the Twelvers, debates. 1722. These must have been fascinating countries to experience in this period of time, like the 1500s to like the 1900s, like before the fall of the Ottomans and shit. Let's see. Contemporary world. Oh, for the that's demographics. I want the. Okay, so there's the Shah, the Qatar. Okay. Usulism would become the community's preeminent form of jurisprudence. Usulism. Usul is the secret inner name for Paul Muad'Dib, which is the mouse. It's the name of the mouse. No, Muad'Dib is the mouse on the moon, right? No, Usul is Usul the mouse on the moon? Either way, one of his personal in-tribe names is Usul. This period did not witness any discourse suggesting that the Twelver, ulama, should formally assume the role of the imam as a political leader, whether in Iran, the only avowed Shiite country, or elsewhere after the fall of the Qajars. Power was assumed by the Pahlavi ruler Reza Shah and later by his son Muhammad Reza Shah. Both strove to check the power of the ulama and to break the clergy-bazaar alliance. Right. You remember in that last Iran video we did that talked about how the Bazarians were in there with them, right? So like this radicalized merchant class of some sort. Be the effectively the go woke companies of their day. Nevertheless, the continued interdependence of the clerical class based on the close relationship with the country's commercial artisanal elements remained an important factor in Iranian politics, was a key factor in the process that resulted in the 1979 overthrow and exile of Mohammad Reza. Okay, so let me take a look here and let's do Twelver ulama. Twelver unity diversity. 12% the problem of the hidden. Cambridge. Okay, let's see. The problem of the hidden imam. Interesting. Summary. The disappearance of the 12th imam in 874. Right, okay, so that's getting into... Alright, that's all their mystical religious stuff, right? That doesn't tell me anything. Okay. Shia clergy. Questions about 12 or... Shia believed to be the 12 or imams. Because, like, when people are talking about, oh, yeah, they're Shiites, there's some sort of fundamental, well, tell us what they are. Okay, they have a 12er. The 12ers have an argument about the ulama. Okay, and this is the big distinction between one way or the other. And if you're, like, gung-ho ulama, you end up being the IRGC, apparently. So is the ulama where we are getting Sharia? Is this their Sharia law system? Right? Maybe I need to go to Google. Maybe I need to give up on DuckDuckGo for getting just something telling me what, what is the ulama? All right, let's go to Google. Let's go to Google. What is the Shiite 12er ulama? All right. I don't care to read the AI answer. All right. Theology, history of 12er Shiism. 12er Shiism, theology behind Iran's global war. What is Shia Islam? 12er Shia, branch of Islam that serves both as it's Laredo, Texas. I'm not going to trust anybody from fucking Texas to understand a shit. Sheikh 12er Shiism and answering Shia reformists. Sunni sect. There isn't anything that's like focused on the ulama itself. You have to like look into the 12er. All right, so let's see what the AI says then. Shiite 12er ulama are the trained religious scholars and clergy in 12er Shiism who interpret Islamic law or Sharia. Yeah, okay, so that's what they are. So, and guide the community, especially during occultation of the 12th Imam. They are the custodians of theology and law trained in seminaries or hazas with high-ranking scholars known as mujtahids or marja al-taqlids. Okay, so, all right, so, yeah, these guys, they're kind of like a confederacy of vicars of the 12th Imam, right? If you were to put this into Roman Catholic parlance, it's like being the vicar of Christ, except you're a confederacy team of imams of some sort, right? Okay. They are organized in a hierarchy with top scholars being source of emulation, or the Marja al-Taqid, whom followers look to for religious rulings. Okay, so you would have to change the Marja al-Taqlid. You'd have to have the ulama agree to new structure. They manage the community's affairs, lead prayers, teach in seminars, and manage religious funds. Okay. Shia clergy, Rouhani, official term, Mullah, Akhund, or simply Shia scholar. They issue fatwas. We all know about that. Modern issues such as financial transactions, social media, or health. Directing religious taxes, they collect and distribute the khums. So that would be like a tithe. Or to orphans, the needy, and for religious education. Sure, they do. All right. Judicial political leaders. In Iran, the ulama, led by a supreme leader, take an active role in state governance. Teaching and preaching. They educate believers in traditional and modern topics. Right. Okay. So. All right. What was the 12er ulama of the last Shah? All right. During the reign of Muhammad Reza Pahlavi, the last Shah of Iran, the prominent 12er Shia ulama were not a unified body supporting him. Rather, they were largely in opposition, led by figures like Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. The Shah's modernization policies, white revolution alienated many senior religious leaders who viewed his rule as illegitimate and un-Islamic. Okay, so he believed, or at least was selling, that that his faith was acceptable to, and is the way that Iran understands proper observation of Shi'ism, right? So, key figures within the Twelver was, okay, so Khomeini, Shahriar Madri, Kashani, Telegani. I believe these are all guys that are I think these are all opposition guys. Yeah, the Bazaris. Okay, so these clerics operate within tradition of Twelver Shi'ism, which believes currently Lamas saw themselves as hidden imam. Okay, so who was the religious counselor of the last Shah? Did not have a formal religious council advising his government as he promoted a secular Western. Sure, but he had to have somebody who was his connection to understanding his Islamic people. The primary religious opposition culminating in 79 revolution was led by, yes, I know, but he telling me he didn't have any fucking people. Secular rule, yeah. I mean, Trump's got a secular rule. He still fucking has priests that he's fucking fond of. The Shah's government increasingly clashed with the clergy, making traditional religious councils irrelevant to his policymaking. Clerical opposition. Post-revolution council. After the revolution, the new government created the Council of Guardians to ensure legislation complied with Islamic law. The only Regency Council. Okay. So, I guess as the Shah, he's a secular Shah, he's a Shiite himself, but he's not a part of the... That's kind of interesting. Right? And, and the interesting parallels to the story being told in Dune are fascinating. So, so there's a lot to be asked of. There's a lot more to be known. We don't have the best look at it, right? Because obviously he seized power at a time where Shia Islam was different. At least different in, I don't know, station, influence. I don't know. There's a lot of history that I still need to figure out.
20 to the power of Circ C.
Let me see. Let me see if this is any good. I'm kind of going with one as kind of a... I'm just going to see if this works. As adding to our knowledge here.
On gas line, Christmas lights were extinguished by executive order. The global economy, the most complex machine ever built, began to seize up like an engine without oil. For decades, we believed the fuel for our civilization was infinite. We were wrong. In a matter of days, the price of the world's most vital resource quadrupled. Power shifted from the skyscrapers of New York to the sands of the Middle East, and the West realized it was a hostage to its own addiction. This wasn't just a shortage, it was an ambush that reshaped every car you drive, every price you pay, and every war we've fought since. This is the story of the day the Earth stood still. This is the 1973 oil shock. Part 1. The Illusion of Abundance. The Gilded Age of the V8 and the Ghost of Infinite Growth. The year is 1965. In the suburbs of Detroit, London, and Tokyo, the air smells of leaded gasoline and optimism. To the average citizen of the post-war West, the future isn't just bright, it is fueled by an inexhaustible, invisible river of black gold. Imagine a world where a gallon of gas costs less than a loaf of bread. A world where efficiency is a word reserved for factory floors, not engines. This was the era of the Great Acceleration. Since the end of World War II, the global economy had expanded at a rate never before seen in human history. This expansion was built on a single, shaky pillar, oil at $3 a barrel. At this moment in history, the West was addicted, but it was a comfortable addiction. In the United States, the interstate highway system was carving through the landscape.
$3 a barrel, right? Like, talking about gas prices in the 70s is like talking about taxes in 1776.
Encouraging millions to move to the suburbs. These suburbs required cars, and those cars, massive, chrome-plated beasts like the Cadillac Eldorado, drank fuel as if the earth were a bottomless well. But who controlled the well? Since the early 20th century, the global oil trade was a private club. It was governed by the Seven Sisters, a group of Anglo-American oil giants including Exxon, Mobil, Texaco, and British Petroleum. These companies didn't just extract oil, they dictated the sovereignty of nations. They functioned as a shadow government, deciding how much oil would be pumped and at what price it would be sold. To the Seven Sisters, the Middle East was not a collection of ancient cultures or rising political powers. It was a gas station with a very long lease. In the palaces of Riyadh and the offices of Kuwait City, a quiet...
Dude, like, if you watch that fucking video from the 70s, I wouldn't even say it just is what it is. It literally just is what it is with the big fucking company that it is. So it's not a shadow government. It's just a government that casts a big corporate shadow.
Resentment was festering. The host nations, the people who actually lived above the oil, received only a fraction of the profits. They watched as their natural wealth built the skyscrapers of New York and the autobahns of Germany, while they remained developing nations. The mystery of 1973 begins here, in this lopsided power dynamic. The West felt entitled to cheap oil. The East felt robbed of their future. It was a pressure cooker with no safety valve. The Western world was living in a dream state, ignoring the fact that their entire civilization was built on a resource they did not own and a political stability they could not guarantee. Historians often look back at this period as the lull before the storm. There were warnings, of course. In 1965, nations met in Baghdad to form Opec. At the time, the Seven Sisters laughed. They called it a paper tiger. They believed that the Arab world was too fractured, too divided by tribalism and Cold War interests, to ever stand united. They were wrong. The illusion of abundance was so thick that even as U.S. domestic oil production peaked in 1970, a terrifying milestone known as Hubbard's Peak, the public didn't blink. They simply imported more. By 1973, the U.S. was importing 36% of its oil. The trap was set. The world was waiting for a spark. And that spark would come not from an economic ledger, but from the heat of a desert war. Part 2. The Spark in the Desert. October 1973, when geopolitics met the gas pump. October 6, 1973. It was the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, Yom Kippur. As silence fell over Israel, the roar of jet engines and the thunder of artillery broke the peace. In a coordinated surprise attack, Egyptian forces surged across the Suez Canal while Syrian tanks hammered at the Golan Heights. The world held its breath. This wasn't just another regional skirmish. This was a high-stakes gamble in the middle of the Cold War. The Soviet Union was backing the Arab coalition with everything it had. If Israel fell, the Middle East would tilt permanently toward Moscow. In Washington, President Richard Nixon and his Secretary of State Henry Kissinger faced a nightmare scenario. Israel was running out of ammunition. Their backs were against the wall. On October 12th, Nixon made a fateful decision. He ordered Operation Nickel Grass, a massive round-the-clock airlift of military supplies to Israel. He famously told his aides, "Send everything that can fly." But the Arab nations had warned the West, "Do not intervene." On October 16, 1973, the oil ministers of the Gulf states met in Kuwait. They weren't just there to discuss prices, they were there to discuss survival. They realized that their oil was more powerful than any Soviet missile. If the West provided the hardware for the war, the Arab world would provide the software for an economic collapse. The announcement was chilling in its simplicity. The Arab members of OPEC, OAPEC, announced they would cut oil production by 5% immediately and continue to cut it by 5% every month until their political goals were met. The next day, the oil weapon was fully unsheathed. Angered by the continued U.S. support for Israel, King Faisal of Saudi Arabia, traditionally a staunch U.S. ally, did the unthinkable. He announced a total embargo on oil shipments to the United States. The shockwaves were instantaneous. This wasn't just a price hike, it was a physical severance of the world's most vital artery. The timing was perfect. The Northern Hemisphere was heading into winter. The world's stockpiles were low. The Seven Sisters were suddenly powerless. The paper tiger of OPEC had grown teeth, and it was biting hard. Inside the White House, the mood was funereal. Kissinger realized that the geopolitics of the 20th century had just shifted on its axis. Power was no longer just about who had the biggest nuclear arsenal. It was about who controlled the flow of energy. The desert kingdoms had realized that by turning a few valves in the sand, they could bring the most powerful industrial machines in history to a grinding halt. This was the moment the oil shock became a reality. The price of a barrel of oil, which had been $3.29 before the war, began a vertical climb that would not stop until it hit nearly $12. To a modern observer, $12 sounds like a bargain. But in 1973, that 300% increase was a cardiac arrest for the global economy. The spark in the desert had ignited a fire that would burn through the heart of the Western world for the next decade. The era of the unlimited was over. The era of scarcity had begun. Part 3. The Great Panic. The Winter of Discontent and the Death of the American Road. As November 1973 bled into December, the reality of the embargo hit the Western consumer like a physical blow. For decades, the car had been more than a tool in America. It was a symbol of freedom, a rite of passage, and a moving living room. Suddenly, that symbol was a liability. The panic didn't start at the government level. It started at the corner gas station. As the supply of crude oil plummeted, the Seven Sisters began to prioritize their dwindling stocks. Gasoline stations across the United States, Europe, and Japan began to run dry. It started with shorter hours.
Now remember, there's this persistent, to this day, obligation to import a certain amount of oil and force us to buy imported oil. Why aren't we doing our domestic thing? Right? And then some bullshit happens and we're like, don't worry about it. We have our reserves. Better not make us tap into our reserves, but we got them. And, it's supposed to be this whole issue about refinement and everything else, and there's supposed to be funny numbers that scarcity is a lie.
Then, the no gas signs appeared, stark, hand-painted plywood boards that signaled the end of an era. The psychological impact was profound. In a nation built on the open road, the road was suddenly closed. For the first time since the rationing of World War II, the American public felt a sense of genuine, systemic vulnerability. Long, serpentine lines of cars, sometimes stretching for miles, became a permanent fixture of the landscape. Drivers would wake up at 4 a.m. just to secure a spot in line, sitting for hours with engines off to save every drop of fuel. Tensions reached a breaking point. Fistfights broke out at pumps. In some states, gas station vigilantes began to patrol the lines to prevent line jumpers. The government, desperate to manage the chaos, introduced the odd-even rationing system. If your license plate ended in an odd number, you could only buy gas on odd-numbered days. It was a bureaucratic attempt to manage a physical shortage, but it only deepened the sense of national malaise. President Nixon, already beleaguered by the burgeoning Watergate scandal, went on national television to announce Project Independence. He lowered the national speed limit to 55 miles per hour, a move that felt like a betrayal to the high-speed culture of the 1960s. He asked Americans to turn down their thermostats to 68 degrees, 20 to the power of Cirque C, and to stop using Christmas lights. The crisis wasn't just limited to the fuel tank. Because oil is the feedstock for the modern world, the panic spread to every sector. The price of plastic, derived from petroleum, soared. the cost of fertilizer tripled, sending food prices into a vertical climb. In the United Kingdom, the government was forced to implement a 3-day week to conserve electricity as coal miners went on strike alongside the oil shortage. For months, British citizens worked by candlelight, their television broadcasts cutting off at 10:30 p.m. to save power. The mystery of this period lies in how quickly the First World reverted to a state of primitive survival. It proved that the complexity of modern civilization was its greatest weakness. One missing ingredient, oil, had the power to turn a superpower into a collection of shivering households and angry commuters. The Great Panic was the moment the West realized it was no longer the master of its own destiny. Part 4. The Silent Architect, Zaki Yamani, the man who held the world's pulse. In the midst of this global chaos, one figure emerged as the undisputed protagonist of the crisis, Sheikh Ahmed Zaki Yamani. As the Saudi oil minister, Yamani was not merely a politician, he was the grand master of a geopolitical chessboard. Yamani was the antithesis of the angry revolutionary. Educated at Harvard and NYU, he was a man of impeccable tailoring, soft-spoken English, and a razor-sharp intellect. While Western media often portrayed the Arab oil ministers as oil sheiks holding the world to ransom, Yamani was playing a far more sophisticated game. He understood a fundamental truth that many of his peers in OPEC did not. If you raise the price of oil too high, you destroy your customers. If you destroy your customers, you destroy yourself. Yamani's goal was not the destruction of the West, but the total recalibration of the relationship between the producer and the consumer. Behind the scenes, Yamani was the silent architect of the New World Order. He managed a delicate balance. On one hand, he had to satisfy the radical elements within OPEC, countries like Libya and Iraq, who wanted to use the oil weapon to crush the Western economy entirely. On the other hand, he was maintaining a secret channel of communication with Henry Kissinger. The mystery of Yamani lies in his foresight. He famously said, "The Stone Age did not end because the world ran out of stones, and the oil age will not end because we run out of oil." He knew that high prices would eventually force the West to find alternatives, be it nuclear, coal, or North Sea oil. Therefore, he used the 1973 shock as a surgical strike. He wanted to raise prices just enough to ensure Saudi Arabia's wealth for generations, but not so much that the world transitioned away from oil prematurely. Throughout 1974, Yamani became the most famous man in the world. He was the only person who could move the global stock.
Right, and yeah, but the thing is that you're spending an assload of money to force fit human beings to live in a place that's not gonna be livable. Like, if you can do all this fucking irrigating, like in the other video that we saw, and fucking fertilizing the goddamn sands and shit, why the fuck aren't you doing it? Like, you should have a huge national fucking project to do that. Just to plant fucking grass and trees, not just fucking food. You could change your whole goddamn ecology. And ecology and economy are intertwined. Because if you can get a forest going, you'll get a whole lot more fucking, like, lumber. You gotta give it a fucking generation or two to grow in. Your kids will appreciate it.
Stock markets with a single sentence. His shuttle diplomacy between Riyadh, Vienna, and Washington was more influential than any military deployment. Yamani's greatest achievement during this period was the nationalization of Aramco, the Arabian American Oil Company. He did not do it through a violent coup or a sudden seizure of assets. Instead, he negotiated a, quote, participation agreement, slowly buying out the American oil giants until Saudi Arabia owned the means of production on its own soil. He was the man who took the Seven Sisters to school. By the time the 1973 shock began to stabilize, the power had shifted. The boardrooms of New York and London were no longer the centers of the energy world. The center was now a quiet, bearded man in a Riyadh office, watching the ticker tape of a world he had helped reshape. Part 5. The Economic Shadow, Stagflation. The monster that rewrote the rules of capitalism. By early 1974, the gas lines began to thin, but a much darker shadow was falling over the global economy. For decades, the world had followed the Keynesian consensus. If the economy slowed down, you lowered interest rates and spent money to create jobs. If the economy grew too fast and caused inflation, you reined it in. It was a seesaw that had worked perfectly since 1945. Then came the oil shock, and the seesaw snapped in half. The world was introduced to stagflation, a portmanteau of stagnation and inflation. It was a phenomenon that economists previously thought was mathematically impossible. How could prices be skyrocketing while unemployment was also rising? Usually, high unemployment meant people had less money to spend, which kept prices low. But oil was the universal input. When the cost of energy tripled, the cost of everything else followed suit, regardless of how many people were out of work. In the United States and Europe, the golden age of capitalism ended with a shudder. The cost of a loaf of bread, a gallon of milk, and a winter coat began to climb by 10%, then 12%, then 15% annually. Savings accounts were eaten alive by the eroding value of currency. In the UK, inflation hit a staggering 24% in 1975. The mystery of stagflation was its resilience. It wasn't a temporary spike, it was a structural rot. Industrial giants like Chrysler and British Leyland hovered on the brink of bankruptcy. The Rust Belt began to form as factories, unable to afford the massive energy bills required to run heavy machinery, began to shutter their doors forever. The social contract was breaking. Labor unions demanded higher wages to keep up with inflation, which forced companies to raise prices even further to cover the wage hikes, a vicious wage-price spiral. The psychological toll was a sense of profound helplessness. The post-war generation, raised on the promise of onward and upward, was suddenly told to do more with less. This era gave birth to the Miser Index, a simple sum of the unemployment rate and the inflation rate.
Right, you see, like, this is literally like, this is the ass-hatted economy. Like, you didn't have this kind of economic psychosis before 1973. It all started fucking here. You know, all of this is, like, we can go back into the Bretton Woods fucking agreement, right? You know, that's like oil conspiracy of the 20th century 101.
By the mid-70s, the misery index was at record highs, and the mood of the West was one of cynical exhaustion. Conclusion: the end of innocence. The 1973 oil shock was more than a temporary disruption of the status quo. It was the funeral for the 20th century's greatest illusion, the idea that resources were infinite and that progress was guaranteed. When the lights flickered in the winter of 1973, the world caught a glimpse of a fragile reality. We learned that the comfort of the West was built on a foundation of sand, managed by a handful of men in a few rooms in Vienna and Riyadh. The era of the open road and the big engine didn't just slow down, it hit a wall of geopolitical reality from which it would never truly recover. But in that darkness, a new world was forged. The crisis forced us to think, to innovate, and to conserve. It gave birth to the environmental movements that now define our global agenda. It forced architects to build for the sun, and engineers to build for efficiency. It taught us that energy security is not a luxury, but the very heartbeat of national survival. As we stand today on the precipice of a new energy revolution, moving from the age of carbon to the age of electrons, the echoes of 1973 are louder than ever. We are once again navigating the treacherous waters of supply chains, resource monopolies, and the shifting power of nations. The players have changed, and the technology has evolved, but the fundamental truth remains. Those who control the flow of energy control the course of history. The 1973 oil shock was a warning shot across the bow of civilization. It reminded us that we are all passengers on a very small, very interconnected planet. It taught us that the price of our modern life is a constant, delicate balance of power. As the credits roll on this chapter of history, the question is no longer when the oil will run out, but whether we have learned enough from the first great shock to survive the next. The history of the 1973 oil shock isn't just a story of the past, it is the blueprint for our future.
Okay. So that is, that's a part of that there. And, you know, there's a lot of ideas that need to be contended about scarcity and stuff with all that and everything else. Because I think that there's way more to it. Because there's just how much you need to compensate for what everyone is doing, right? Like, OPEC, as the other video had said, like OPEC had to form as the Middle East's control answer to communism, right? So that was a big part of the OPEC alliance, and all that development had, you know, built these nations to what they are. With all of the imported workers and everything else, right? Because you're asking for something of impossible population type. And if you've got the nationalist feeling about you, you're not interested in being like, oh, let's take them over, right? But at the same time, it's like, can we do business ecumenically? And how do we grow and things like that? Right? Because the Middle East has been getting all the good stuff, all the best, like, architecture and infrastructure and all that shit, right? And there's a lot of places in the Middle East that don't get to have terrorism. They don't get to have the vulnerability of airspace to deal with the airstrikes of hostile neighbors and so on and so forth. Anyway, I think that's going to be good for tonight. A good 2.5 hour run here. And it's just, I don't believe that it's worth it to have an artificial population like that, right? So there needs to be a much different way of life, I think. Because how are you growing, right? Like, how big are these populations now versus then of, like, their people that are historically of those lands, whether they had conquered it a long time ago or more recently, but it's like, it's them, it's their thing, it's their people, right? Their people in their continuity. Because even Iran today, with the IRGC doing what it's doing, it's still their continuous people. Okay. So, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see when next I'm urged to do this thing. Have a great night.